Our two speakers, Professor Sonia Surabhi Gupta and Ranjit Kumar, both of whom have had first-hand knowledge of not just Venezuela, but the region, will shed light on the specificities of the country. In particular, they will dwell on Venezuela's history, especially the key characteristics of the Bolivarian revolution led by its beloved leader, Hugo Chavez, and the nature of its democracy. They are both well placed to do this because they had just visited Venezuela last May as part of an international team to observe the national elections there. They will also speak about the continuous escalation of economic warfare by successive US administrations since President Obama's in 2015, which has imposed severe hardships on the people of Venezuela. Our speakers who are in touch with people in Venezuela since the US aggression will also explain as to why the US assault on the country is likely to meet stiff resistance. In short, on why Venezuela in 2026 will be very different from the invasion of Iraq 2 decades ago in 2003. At the collective, we believe that the unique experience of our two speakers would provide the Indian audience with a well-rounded perspective on the country, the region, and their people, especially because of the media's utter failure to provide an accurate and unbiased account of happenings in that part of the world. Our first speaker today will be Professor Sonia Surabhi Gupta, who's Professor of Spanish and Latin American Studies at Jamia Millia Islamia in Delhi. Professor Sonia studied the Spanish language at JNU, and in 1987 established and headed the Center for Hispanic Studies at the English and Foreign Languages University in Hyderabad for nearly 2 decades. In 2006, she established the Center for Spanish and Latin American Studies at Jamia, of which she has been the founder director. She is well known for her outstanding contributions as a key architect of institutional structures for Spanish and Latin American studies in India. Professor Sonia has traveled widely in Latin America, particularly to Venezuela, Brazil, Colombia, and Cuba. She has visited Venezuela 5 times since 2016, interacting not just with government officials and intellectuals, but also with ordinary Venezuelans. Incidentally, and interestingly for us today, Professor Sonia served as an interpreter to Nicolas Maduro when he visited India in 2012 as foreign minister under Hugo Chavez. Her research interests focus on knowledge flows in the global south, with special reference to Latin America and India in a cross-cultural context. She has edited a volume titled Connected History, Shared Present, Cross-Cultural Experiences Between Latin America, Caribbean, and India, which is due to be released in 2026 and published by Tulika Books. She is also a Hindi translator of works by Spanish and Latin American writers such as Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Professor Sonia has been active in the All India Peace and Solidarity Organization and affiliate of the World Peace Council. Our second speaker will be Ranjit Kumar, who is founder and executive director at the Institute of Spanish Studies in Bangalore. Ranjit studied Spanish at the School of Languages in JNU between 1999 and 2014 and has taught the language at the Center for Global Languages at Bangalore University since 2012. He has traveled to Cuba and Venezuela in 2025. As I mentioned, he was part of a team of international observers of the national elections there. His close connections with Venezuelans has enabled him to gather first-hand information since the attack, which he will present to us today. The format for this event will be as follows. Each speaker will speak for about 20 minutes. This will leave about 15 to 20 minutes for questions addressed to the speakers. The event is being hosted on Zoom and will also be simultaneously cast on our YouTube channel. As a moderator, I will coordinate and facilitate this process. Those on Zoom can post their questions in the chat box. Our volunteers will gather questions from the YouTube channel and relay them here. Over to you, Sonia.
Right. Thank you very much, Sridhar. It is indeed, a really important opportunity to be sharing with all of you in the Bengaluru Collective and all those who have connected to the talk today, because the world, of course, is still stunned at this devious abduction of President Maduro. But I'd like to begin by paying my homage to all those who martyred and gave their lives in the recent January 3 attack when the kidnapping took place. Of course, in Venezuela, we've been, attending some meetings, and we have been in touch with people whom we know. And the initial disbelief has turned into anger and pain that we can see, from the images that people are pouring out into the streets of Caracas and other cities. And while the far right, of course, the far right opposition is, of course, celebrating the brazen US invasion into their own country, which they had been demanding for quite some time. But we must know that even the moderate democratic and nationalist opposition leaders have condemned the military intervention. So while most of the world understands that it is Venezuelan oil and the geopolitics of the petrodollar that are at the crux of the current escalation of US intervention in Venezuela, it is important to understand for us here, what is at stake, that what is at stake actually is the entire Bolivarian project. So today what I'd like to do is to start with by explaining what exactly is the Bolivarian revolution or the Bolivarian process, and why it is important to defend it. Of course, many of us have been following the Bolivarian revolution, or the Bolivarian process as we call it, and which began in 1998. And as we know, it has kind of led to fierce internal debate, uh, and the Western governments, of course, are so accustomed to counting on, obeisant regimes. This has been an oil-rich state, and most of Latin America has, as you know, been considered its backyard. That the Cuba in the 1960s and the recent developments in the Latin American region in the beginning of the 21st century have actually kind of it's something new in the history of Latin American region. As far as Venezuela is concerned, before 1998, it was a formal democracy like those that we knew, many of us are familiar with. It was ruled by a two-party power sharing arrangement. And it was the oil exports that had kind of buoyed its economy. And 60s and 70s, for example, Venezuela was a major economy. It had a lot of money. Of course, even in those days, poverty was widespread, particularly amongst the non-white population, which forms the majority of the Venezuelan population. But when the prices dropped in 1979 and the country began this 20-year decline, poverty and inequality skyrocketed to the highest levels, not only in Venezuela, in entire Latin America. The 80s are known as the lost decade. And that's the time they're known as the lost decades, the 80s and 90s, because that's when most of these governments, started these IMF mandated austerity measures, which led to further inequality and popular discontent and street protests, which which actually started in Venezuela. So many of you may be aware that in 1989, what later came to be known as the social movements of the 90s in the entire Latin America actually began with Venezuela in 1989, when the government massacred some 3,000 civilian protesters in Caracas. It's known as the Caracazo, the 1989 Caracazo. And that was the catalyst for the Hugo Chavez's Bolivarian Revolution, and it began a series of struggles and popular movements against the predatory structural adjustments programs in entire Latin America. So it's important to remember that even as the Berlin Wall fell and the socialist camp disintegrated, an event which the free market disciple Francis Fukuyama called the end of history, Latin America actually started seeing this uninterrupted electoral victories of the center left and leftist forces in many countries, starting with the election of Hugo Chavez in Venezuela in December 1998. And this we know this the wave of governments, the pink tide that was seeking alternatives to neoliberalism. I mean, it might be just opportune to remind ourselves that it is precisely around these years in 1996 that in India we were afforded an opportunity when the Prime Minister Devegowda became the Prime Minister, the 11th Prime Minister, breaking the Congress, and the BJP was still to come, but there was a possibility of the left coming to power through elections in India also. In any case, coming back to Latin America, I think it is important to go back to the roots of the Bolivarian Revolution to understand why it is not just oil. Of course, oil is the major reason, the control of the natural resources, but the fact that the Bolivarian Revolution, in many ways, was a threat to US hegemony in Latin America, is what we need to understand in order to, kind of place what has happened on January 3. Uh, the Bolivarian constitution actually characterizes the Venezuelan society as democratic, participatory, and protagonistic. So in 1990s, Hugo Chavez actually theorized this concept of democracia protagonica, which means a protagonist democracy in which the leading role would be of the citizens in the governance of state, in contrast to the leading role that normally is played by the public representatives, the elected representatives in liberal democracies. In fact, not just in Venezuela, this was the bedrock of the emancipatory projects of the pink tide. What Arvalo Garcia Lorena, the vice president of Ecuador, called democracies in revolution. So the idea of participatory and inclusive democracy, which would be exercised through plebeian power, and democracy would transcend its formal representative version, and the state itself would become a site for, and democracy itself would become a site for the transformation, a popular transformation of the state. So, this dual dynamics of capture of state power on one hand, its existing institutions, but on the other hand, creating autonomous spaces for emancipation and creativity to reinforce local, structures. And this, in the case of Venezuela, took the form of what is known as the bedrock of the idea of 21st century socialism, contrasting it with earlier forms of socialism, was precisely through the system of local popular self-governments of communes or communal councils to replace the old institutional framework of bourgeois liberal democracy. So this leading role of citizens, the commune was conceived of as the expression of people's power, or poder popular. So these communes were actually empowered local communities, and it is these organized communes which today are turning up in big numbers on the streets of Caracas and other cities, demanding that their president be returned back to Venezuela. But it might also be important to recall that uh, these democracies in revolution faced and are facing a conservative onslaught even before they got a chance to consolidate their gains and move beyond the post neoliberal phase. So, for example, in 2015, 2016, from Brazil to Venezuela, there was a massive right wing assertion in the region. In India, it starts in 2014. And of course, this resulted in major shifts in the geopolitical landscape of the region. In Brazil, the right wing was able to engineer the impeachment of Dilma Rousseff in 2016. In Ecuador, the the elections actually threw up Lenin Moreno, who contested from the platform of citizens' revolution, but he changed course and he joined the camp of the opposition. So, and since then, the citizens' revolution has not been able to come back to power. Recent elections in Ecuador were manipulated to keep the left candidate Laura Hernandez out. And today, Ecuador's president Daniel Noboa was one of the first in Latin America, along with Argentina's Javier Milei, to welcome the abduction of President Maduro. In Honduras, elections in December 2017, threw up a left candidate, Salvador Nasralla, as the winner, but the ruling right wing, aided by the US, literally stole the elections. And this has kind of ensured that Honduras, though the left came back to power, but again, we have seen in the recent elections that happened in November 2025, the data showed that Salvador Nasralla, the liberal candidate, was leading and was closely, of course, followed by two right wing candidates. But on December 2, and this is very important to know, the Election Commission acknowledged technical failures in the disclosure of the results. And they actually started asking the company that they had contracted what has happened. The Election Commission itself has accused the US of intervening in the elections, and as the Trump backed candidate Nasri Asfoura has been declared the winner. So, this is important to remember because when we went last year, three of us, Vijaya Venkatraman, myself, and Ranjit, had gone to Venezuela last year, and we had this briefing from the Election Commission of Venezuela. I'm sure Ranjit is going to talk more about it. The Election Commission of Venezuela reported exactly the same thing. At that year, that time in December 2024, July 2024, Nicolas Maduro was accused of stealing the election. But when, as I said, that when we went there as international observers, we were explained how there was a technical failure that had prompted the election commission to take up a manual count of votes, which took a long time. And it was after that manual count that Maduro was declared the winner. Now, even at that time, several of us were thinking, how this could have happened. But now, with what has happened in Honduras, a technical failure because of which the Election Commission has had to resort to manual count of votes, and the election in the meantime, Salvador, this new gentleman, Asfura, backed by Trump. In fact, even the right wing candidate, the third right wing candidate, is now contesting the results in Honduras. So, uh, in each election in Venezuela, actually, the US backed opposition has cried foul. In 2019, they did not recognize the results, and many Western democracies, the US, of course, said that Juan Guaido, who was the president of the National Assembly at that time, we must remember that in 2015, the opposition had won. And therefore, all through 2015 to 2019, a very difficult phase in Venezuela, it was the opposition which was in majority, and the National Assembly president at that time was an opposition person, Juan Guaido, and the Western democracies declared him as the interim president. We all know this. And in the same repeat of that in 2024, the opposition candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, was declared the winner as far as the opposition was concerned, who contested the results. Edmundo Gonzalez, by the way, is known as Matacuras in Venezuela. Matacura means somebody who has killed priests because he has a history of having supported death squads in the 1980s. He was posted in El Salvador in the embassy of Venezuela as the first secretary, and he's considered to be responsible. I mean, from what I read, for assassinating social activists and Jesuit priests, including Archbishop Romero. So these are the antecedents of the far right candidates that are being presented as the alternative to the Chavista leadership. So, as of today, the main battlefield is Venezuela, where the Bolivarian revolution has stood its ground despite many challenges. And that is why what is happening now in Venezuela assumes added importance. As I have been saying since the beginning, the Bolivarian process faced the ire of the elites within the country and the US outside. I don't have to remind you of the failed coup against Chavez in 2002. Chavez was also endlessly maligned as an authoritarian dictator. And it's ironic that he did not, the coup plotters were not jailed after Chavez returned to power due to the popular upsurge in his favor. Of course, President Maduro's kidnapping is far more serious because he has been abducted and out of the country, and though the US has not been able to bring about a regime change this time either, as of now, the fact is that it is a very, very serious and dangerous situations. And of course, the as we know, the kidnap was done by the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, because he has been maligned as a trafficker apart from being called a dictator. So let's give a minute to understanding who this person, Nicolas Maduro, is and what has been his role. The first time, as Sridhar mentioned, I met Nicolas Maduro was in August 2012 during his visit to India during the India CELAC foreign ministers meeting. The CELAC itself, a conglomerate of 33 Latin American Caribbean nations, was an outcome of the regional integration which the Bolivarian process had kind of aspired for and supported. So I was his translator during this visit, and I had a first-hand experience of seeing his keen political intellect. He had a meeting with some select, writers, journalists, etc., in the ambassador's home, in the Venezuelan ambassador's home, and I remember his, unfortunately there are no taped versions of it, but his political training was absolutely evident in that speech. He comes from a working class family, and you will all know that, he was a bus driver in the Caracas metro system, but he was a union leader, and he then, as a prominent union activist, as a part of the Chavista project led by President Hugo Chavez, he became a member of the parliament. He was a foreign minister during 2006 and 2012. And from October 2012, after he was the vice president, and after Hugo Chavez's death, he became the interim president and then won the elections in 2013. Maduro inherited a daunting task because, of course, Chavez had this charisma and it also coincided with record high oil prices. But Maduro had to lead the country through an era of scarcity and unprecedented external and internal aggression. So while the Hugo Chavez government had, the Bolivarian project had tried to diversify the economy, but it has basically been a oil driven economy. And when the oil prices dropped in 2014 from 130 a barrel to $30 per barrel, well, the country was plunged into an economic crisis, and there was a triple digit inflation, mass for food shortages, medicine shortages, and around 6 million Venezuelans left Venezuela at that time. And as I was telling you, in 2015, the National Assembly elections, the opposition won a majority. For all those who say that elections have been a fraud in Venezuela, when it comes to the 2015 elections, in fact, I was there in the embassy of Venezuela. We were all watching the election results, and we saw how the Chavistas lost that election. But this loss of the Chavistas in the National Assembly elections actually emboldened the opposition, and they were now looking for a quick overthrow of the president. And that is why I'm saying that despite polarization, despite such destabilization attempts and the manipulation of the political process by the US, President Maduro has been able to preserve unity within the PSUV, within the Chavistas, within the armed forces, and even in the country. You see, within the Chavistas, there are different groups, different ways of thinking. And Maduro was able to keep all of them together. It is a heterogeneous revolutionary discourse. He was calm, he was patient, he was an able negotiator, even within the Bolivarian revolution. And of course, his commitment to the communes is fantastic. He deepened, the communes had gone weak during this crisis period, but he deepened the commune process. And in many ways, the communes, the extension that the communes have had is during Maduro's leadership, and they were granted substantial decision making power and autonomy. And despite this staggering inflation, because of the communes and the Chavista project, the Bolivarian project managed to keep the social programs, or the misiones, the missions as they are called, afloat in an adopted form. Another very important thing that under Maduro's leadership, the Bolivarian project has done is the creation of Bolivarian militias and collectives. Uh, so these are civilian militias, mainly intended to be able to withstand a possible foreign intervention or domestic organized unrest. And in total, there are about 4 million Venezuelans who are a part of these civil militias and collectives. Now, one can say a lot about these militias, but people say that they're armed gangs. But in any case, I mean, people meaning the opposition, but in any case, they've ensured that Venezuela, after the kidnapping of President Maduro, did not end up in a civil war, as happened in military interventions elsewhere in Libya in 2011. So, I mean, Ranjit will talk about this, but in recent years, even the Venezuelan economy had started to recover. And many of the Venezuelans who had left Venezuela had been returning home. And this precisely explains and partially why President Maduro won the 2024 elections. As far as the foreign policy is concerned, President Maduro followed Hugo Chavez's footsteps, a tireless anti imperialist course. Venezuela served as an engine for Latin American integration, resisted US interference, and what is most important, that it was able to forge strategic alliances with countries such as China, Russia, and Iran, and challenge Washington's hegemony. So, this move towards a multilateral world where Latin America is no longer a backyard of the US, that is what made the country, alongside, of course, its vast oil reserves, a primary target of US aggression. In the last years, I mean, actually, from the beginning of the Bolivarian Revolution, there has been a hybrid war against Venezuela: informational, economic, financial, paramilitary war. So, the media war, of course, briefly, we will sum it up to say that, they'll say Venezuela is a failed socialist state due to the corrupt practices of its dictatorial president, Nicolas Maduro. And he has usurped power, he has crushed political opposition. His policies have bankrupted Venezuela's economy, leading to debilitating shortages in food and medicine. Venezuelan people are increasingly desperate, and a potential way out of this morass is a regime change, which the US can bring about. But what is systematically left out of this dominant story is that the role the United States has played in seeking to replace the Bolivarian revolution of Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro with a more friendly regime, friendly to its strategic interests. The other thing that they've done and been quite successful at is to make Venezuela a pariah state, isolated in the Organization of American States by interfering in the 2024 elections, where many left-leaning governments also, statesmen in Latin America like Gabriel Boric, etc., did not actually initially accept the 2024 uh, 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 elections. Economic strangulations, you're all aware of the US sanctions, which have actually exacerbated the suffering of the Venezuelan people. And in a way, they also push the government in the direction of increasing, authoritarianism, and thus provide some credibility to US propaganda claims. And then they say, look, now let me talk about the destabilization through the of the opposition. I don't know if you people have heard of this word guarimba. The guarimbas are, you know, uh, they are paramilitary kind of forces. They are they have carried out violent protests in Venezuela. And they are part of the coup strategy of the opposition. They get funding from the US and abroad in 2017, 2014, even in 2024 after the July elections, when there were massive protests and violence in 28, 29 July. Basically, if you look at the data, the lives that the people who died were actually Chavista leaders and armed forces personnel. There were attacks on universities, hospitals. When I went to Venezuela in 2017, the Guarimba was at its peak. And the Western press was saying that the violence was being perpetrated by Maduro. I remember at that time, the Chavistas were scared of walking in Caracas. The Guarimba burned the Chavistas alive, especially the black, the colored Chavista supporters were singled out. So, but even in the face of such provocation, Maduro had given orders not to shoot at them. They had told the police not to shoot at them, and yet he was painted as a tyrant, while actually what he was doing is that he was avoiding a
Sonia,
civil war in Venezuela.
need to wind up.
Yeah, I'm winding up, I'm finishing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think what has happened now, all these conspiracy theories that he himself has given up to the US, or it is the PSUV leadership that has betrayed him. I think these are problematic because they're not only problematic, they're dangerous. The idea is to create a division in the leadership, Chavista leadership. both many of us attended this virtual meeting on January 8 with the foreign minister of Venezuela and Maduro's son, Nicolas Ernesto Maduro. And we can see a unity in the Chavistas. Delcy Rodriguez herself comes from a revolutionary family, and the what has hit them is the overwhelming technology. The Cuban internationalists and the Venezuelan soldiers put up a fight. They were whatever they were able to of capable of putting up, but the U.S. military power is strong. And what the Bolivarian Revolution was able to do is stop a full-fledged, uh, ground war. And even the narrative that he's narco-terrorist, that he's the head of the Cartel de los Soles, we know that the Department of Justice has now withdrawn that charge and said that there is no such Cartel de los Soles. So the Bolivarian Revolution, to a great extent, has been able to stop and not allow a full-fledged military invasions. Mobilizations have also countered these lies. And the fact that the Cuba, Colombia, and Mexico have been threatened next is because and may not be actually there may not be a further intervention is because the Bolivarian Revolution has been able to withstand this major U.S. intervention, and the situation continues to be very dangerous, and that is why it's important for people like us to understand and stand by the Venezuelan people. Thanks.
Thank you, Sonia. Uh, Now, Ranjit, the floor is yours.
Yes. So, thank you, Bangalore Collective. Can you hear me? Yeah. So, I thank you for this opportunity to talk about Venezuela and what is happening currently in Venezuela. Thank you, Professor Sonia and Professor Vijaya. I travel with you and as professors of Spanish and Latin American studies while traveling also, I learned a lot about the Latin American politics, history, and many things during our travel. So, when I'm talking about this attack was that happened on 3rd of January, there are many things that people are not mentioning when they are talking about the attack. And also in general discourse or general discussion that we have, many points people do not mention. For example, when they try to balance things, some of the discussions I have gone through in various social media and other groups where they try to equate things that probably Venezuelans or the politicians of Venezuela, they tried to attract something, they did something bad. These things are kind of rumors are also being spread. Those things are kind of it is a tactics or the strategy of the media controlled by the United States. So during that attack, we heard that about 100 people were killed. Among those 100 people, 32 were Cuban soldiers. So media and other people are not talking about those people who died in those that attack. And had it been in any other country, in any European country, people would have definitely discussed it in detail, and it would have been a very big news in the international media. About those 100 people, currently nobody is talking. So I pay tribute to those people who laid down their lives, and some innocent people were also killed during that attack. And some of them were not even Chavistas, some of them were not even government supporters. And we also hear some news from our social media and other places that there are people who are celebrating. Some of them are outside Venezuela, some of them are in the US. These people from the beginning, they are playing in the hands of the empire. I would say that because when they are celebrating such an attack and not condemning the attack by a foreign power on their own people, on their own government, they have I can say that no sense of any patriotic uh, patriotism. So these people also do not know what were the reasons were why they had to leave their country. They had to leave their country because the US had sanctions on their country. They made their lives difficult. That is why they had to go out of the country. So these are the few things that needs to be considered. I have some pictures that I have m- included in one of the in a presentation that I have created. I'm going to share my screen and then I will continue this with this uh, discussion. I hope you are able to see my screen. Kindly confirm if you are able to see my screen.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Yeah. So this attack is not an isolated event, but it is part of a historical kind of a doctrine which considers that the Latin American territory belongs to us, and we are the people who will rule this part of the world. And the resources and anything that people think they have to be controlled by us. Their future, their fate, everything belongs to us. This is what is the philosophy uh, behind this attack. Now you can see on my screen that this is the pictures that you see a person who has got a Nobel Peace Prize this year. So the Peace Prize has been given to a person who invited invasion on her own country. Do you find it a very normal thing? And will it be accepted in any part of the world where a person inviting invasion on any on her own country is being given a Nobel Prize? This was already a pre-planned attack, and the Nobel Prize was also a kind of planned move by the Western powers, and Donald Trump was already part of this conspiracy. Why I say this? Because the day this Nobel Prize was announced, many of the people said that this is the declaration of war on Venezuela. By declaring the Nobel Peace Prize to Maria Corina Machado. Uh, After this uh, attack, Maria Corina Machado is dedicating her prize to President Donald Trump. I do not know, but peace loving people all across the world will not agree that any of these people deserve any Nobel Prize. So that is why 91% or majority of Venezuelan, they do not accept Maria Corina Machado as their leader. And this is the reason after this attack, she has not been even considered by Donald Trump for any kind of. There is no actually after this attack. This attack is also very different from all the coups that we have seen across the region. That there is no plan after this attack. what is going to happen in Venezuela? They have abducted the president. That is the success that they got. But actually, they were trying to intimidate and threaten Venezuela for many months, for 3, 4 months. The warships were in the Caribbean Sea for several months, and there were attempts to threaten Nicolas Maduro to leave the country. And Marco Rubio, Donald Trump, they tried their best to intimidate the Venezuelan government and the Bolivarian leadership. But this did not bring any result. And till the last moment, you see that a president, a very brave president like Nicolas Maduro, he kept working normally. On the day of attack, he met the Chinese delegation a few hours ago. Before that, he was celebrating New Year. He was celebrating Christmas. So there was no, he was not intimidated. He did not fear this kind of threatening that was coming from the United States. And now I can say that after this attack, when this attack took place, since United States does not have any plan for Venezuela and does not have any credible alternative, they don't have any opposition leader, they did not have any plan to have any interim government. The Bolivarian revolution is still in progress. Nothing has changed. The same government is in power. So I can say that Bolivarian revolution and Venezuelan people have not been defeated, and actually they are winning. The only thing is that their president is abducted currently. Why I'm saying they are winning, that there are few developments that if you observe in the media, that United States now wants to start business with Venezuela. Earlier, they only had put sanctions on the country. They were the ones who were not allowing Venezuela to sell their petroleum, to sell their natural resources. Now they want to buy. They are holding meeting with the companies like Exxon Mobil and other petroleum companies, and they are talking about giving them licenses and permissions to do business with Venezuela. So this is practically a victory. Venezuelans have never said no to any business, any petroleum business. They were already doing business and they were selling petroleum to Venezuela. Chevron is doing business with Venezuela. They are buying their petroleum. So for Bolivarian revolution, there is no change. The government is in continuation, and they are, as always, willing to do business with whoever wants to buy their petroleum. But yeah, their sovereignty is something that we all are concerned about. That internally there are many attempts of rumors, as Professor Sonia mentioned. This is part of hybrid war also, that to divide the leadership of Bolivarian revolution, many attempts are being made which are not going to be successful. Now coming back to the Maria Corina Machado, here is a picture that you can see that she is shaking hands with George W. Bush. And she has also contacted Benjamin Netanyahu, and she has appealed in the past to attack her own country. Yes. So the Bolivarian Revolution, when it came to power in 1999, as we all know, that they made many fundamental changes. From representative democracy, Venezuela became a participatory democracy. I will talk about the electoral process in the later part of this presentation. Currently, there are a lot of protests, and people all around the world, they are very concerned, and they are uh, protesting against this kind of attack that Venezuela has faced. So, when such rumors are being spread, they are also appealing that please listen to Venezuelans in Venezuela. Majority of Venezuelans support their president Nicolas Maduro, and they demand his release as soon as possible. And the Venezuelan this kind of attack that United States has carried out on Venezuela, this is not going to be a similar attack as we saw in Iraq or any other part of the world. The people in Venezuela are very well organized. The level of democratic consciousness and empowerment is at a very grassroots level. So people are going to fight back. That is why there is no further action, or there is no further attack, as the United States government has mentioned. There is nothing else they are going to do currently. That is what they have told. The only thing that they can do is that they can target the leadership. Venezuela has been receiving support from the international leaders and the regional leaders like Gustavo Petro, Luis Inacio Lula da Silva, and Claudia Sheinbaum. Other leaders who also were confused earlier, now they have got it clarity that they may be opposed to a particular individual or a leader, but since the attack is on a nation, attack is on the sovereignty of the nation, they cannot tolerate it, because next could be them. So, as you know, that leaders like Gabriel Boric, and sometimes for sometimes even Lula da Silva, they had this criticism of the government. Now they have openly come to support of the Venezuelan government and the Bolivarian process. Yeah. This is a picture I'm posting, that the attack has happened in such a time where the Venezuelan people have, the Venezuelan economy has recovered in the last 2 years. Their growth rate is between 6 and 9%. The agricultural products are being grown in the country, and Venezuela is becoming independent in many sectors, including agro and food sector. So this is the data by CEPAL, and before the year ended, there was also a report of the UNDP that Venezuela is the fastest growing economy in Latin America. I have a video which I would like to show you. Uh, you can see that when they talk of the problems and economic collapse or something, the country is now on a very fast path of recovery and economic activities. During my visit also, I noticed that it is everything is normal. There is no in the markets, supermarkets, the economic activities are taking place, and things are being sold and purchased. People are busy in shopping. There are shopping malls. I'm playing this video so that you can see. So this is Caracas. So in Caracas, when I traveled with our professors, I did not find anyone begging or lying on the road, or the way you see pictures of New York streets. So those kind of poverty was not visible on Caracas streets. Also, this city is very clean. I also captured one more video outside the booth, the polling booth where election was taking place. I would like to show you some pictures of the economic activities here. So this economic recovery is happening despite this kind of cruel embargo on the country. And opposition and people who are against the government, they never talk about it. They never talk about it. And also, I want to mention this, that while sanctions are going on the country, opposition does not stop receiving funds from the United States. In fact, when we were in Venezuela, one of the persons said that founding an opposition political party is a profitable business, that you can get a lot of money and you can enjoy with that money for next 3 4 years. So this funding that the opposition current opposition that is discredited uh, has been receiving without any interruption. Yeah. So, coming back to this electoral system, which we went to observe, because uh, the their yeah, this is their election commission, you can say, that is called Consejo Nacional Electoral. They conduct the election all over the country, and this institution is very strong currently. So in this screen, you can see it is in Spanish that I captured during a presentation that was happening about their electoral system. That, as per the Constitution of 1999, the country from being it became a participatory democracy. Earlier, it was a uh, representative democracy. And I also wish to mention that after the Chavez government came to power, it only 33% people used to have the voter ID card. Now, government of Chavez started enrolling people, and those places where they were making voting cards, they were very far from the rural places. They were only in the cities, and they had to visit several times to get a voter ID card. So after Chavez government came to power in 99, they started enrolling the people, and also the thumb impression, the voter identification by thumb impression started. So because of this thumb impression, they could avoid any duplicate creating any duplicate cards. Before that also, in during this Bolivarian revolution's first government, they gave 30% reservation to the women, and that was extended to 40% later, and currently it is more than that. This is a the Venezuelan Election Commission has published this outside a booth, which says that their electoral system is subject to audit. It guarantees, and citizens verification is guaranteed, and they have many types of uh, audits that can be done. These are the checks that I have just translated it using Google. So all the checks are done. The first machines are checked properly at several levels of checks. Then the voting is electronic, and after the electronic voting, they also a paper is printed which is stored in a box, and those boxes, some of those boxes have to be counted. A certain percentage of those boxes are mandatory to be counted. Yeah, so this is a picture of a voting booth. The way we vote in India, they also have a similar system of voting. It was in a place called Sucre. Yeah, after the verification, and after the verification, the person goes to the booth, and he, mm, yeah, there are, you can see two booths, two posts you can see. In one of the places, the physical the card that is generated after voting, that is being put by the person, and in another place that is hidden, that is covered with the carton box, there we have the voting machine, the electronic machine. Yeah, this is a picture where the current interim president Delcy Rodriguez is visible in yellow t-shirt. She was campaigning for a governor, a candidate who was seeking re-election as governor of Miranda province. His name is Elio Serrano. So this particular campaign, we saw that the very long stretch of street was full of people, and there was no place to stand. You can see from the same campaign, I have captured this picture. Yeah. So this is how is the electoral process, and as of now, we found as observers, we found that it is a very transparent system where there is a possibility of audit, and f- their own citizens can claim for the audits, and the opposition definitely can. So the institutions currently are very strong in Venezuela, and they are very pro-people institutions have been created after the Bolivarian Revolution, or the Chavez government has come to power. So this kind of attack that has been launched by the United States on these countries, and this is going to be they are threatening other countries also, like Mexico and Colombia. So currently, the from the government side and also from the other leaders of that region, like Gustavo Petro, they are under negotiation with the United States, and we hope that the president of Venezuela is released soon and he again continues to be the president. So, thank you so much. Anything that you would like to ask, you can. I would like to answer what I saw in Venezuela. Thank you.
Sorry, I've been muted. Thank you, Ranjit. Uh, I have uh, I have a couple of questions. One is about the what kind of we know that from the first Trump administration, or till and the second Trump regime now, uh, the involvement of China in Latin America has deepened very significantly and is not based on the same model of extraction that is uh, characteristic of the American involvement in Latin America for more than a century. Now, what kind of a countervailing influence will this have on happenings in Venezuela? But that is one to both of you. And the other question is, we in India, I mean, our media's coverage of the crisis in Venezuela has been very shoddy, to say the least. It has not even, I mean, it has not even used the appropriate words for describing what has happened in Venezuela. I mean, you can't call an abduction, you call them a capture. The president of a sovereign nation is kidnapped virtually, and you can't characterize it as that. Today's one of the papers today has kidnapping in inverted quotes. I mean, what kind of so? I wanted to ask you, and the New York Times today has another story on how Delcy Rodriguez is it suggests that Delcy Rodriguez is more amenable to American influence, she is willing to bargain and so on, without in any way characterizing the situation as one in which her president has been kidnapped and the complete uneven strength of the two countries in question, the United States and Venezuela. So she has to. I mean, any police officer will tell you that when there is a kidnapping incident, you negotiate with the kidnapper. I mean, that doesn't give the kidnapper the right to kidnap. So I mean, so in this situation, and whereas if I look at, say, something like Telesur, as Ranjit advised me last week, I see a completely different picture. So, what can you suggest? What avenues we have for an unbiased and fair coverage of happenings in Venezuela and in Latin America? Yeah, Sonia?
Yeah, thank you. I'll take the second question, that is the one on Delsi, I think it is again a part of, you see, what has happened in Venezuela has been planned. So you first have a, media narrative saying there are drugs and, you attack those boats, they're just poor fishermen, but you paint them as drug carrying boats, and then you capture or enter, you invade, and you pick up the president. In fact, if you just go back to the very first press conference which Donald Trump gave after the incident, this suggestion that we are talking to Delcy, and Marco Rubio has just had a half an hour conversation with her, etc. This is a clever, this is not an innocent and innocuous remark. This was to suggest, one, it was to sow seeds of distrust. Many people, I got calls from left supporters and supporters of Venezuela, that what is this? Isn't Delsi behind all of it? Very, very influential people have been writing on WhatsApp groups that no, 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 this was all pacted. Nicolas Maduro's, these people have given, in order to save themselves, he is paying the price for it, etc. So these conspiracy theories, but basically, I think, as you have very rightly pointed out, and as we were told by the foreign minister when we attended this meeting on this virtual meeting on December 8th, that he said, please have trust on us. Please have faith on us. One, we are united. Number two, we are dealing with the nuclear power. Just a lot of things was left unsaid. But they just, one, that Delsi actually comes from a family which has faced violence itself. Her father was killed by far right. Uh, he was actually killed. He was a urban guerrilla. So she has a solid formation, and she has been a trusted leader within the PSUV. And that, as I mentioned in my talk, the entire idea now is to sow seeds of doubt, distrust, not only within the Chavistas, but also in our minds, in the minds of the solidarity. This will weaken the solidarity movements. If you think that the Chavistas are actually, compromising, a lot of people are saying, is there a surrender? The point is that, as Ranjit has also said, Venezuela has always wanted to sell US its oil. When the US has been a major partner of its oil exports. So out of the total exports, I think 71% are oil exports, and out of which 21 or 27%, I don't remember the data exactly, has always been destined for the US. And therefore, but the point is that it is true that there is an information war, and we have to be careful. We have to have faith in the Bolivarian project. As you are saying, they at this moment cannot afford a civil war. They cannot afford another invasion. And therefore, as far as the China question is concerned, this is precisely what the opposition, one of the opposition deputy was saying, that it is not just a question of, I will rule, I will get the money, and then I will give you some of it. There are administrative questions involved here. China can go also to the International Tribunal and say, look, we have um, actually contracts. But what was happening with China, major thing that was happening with China is, one, that it was not happening in dollars, the trade was not happening in dollars. And secondly, that if you go to Caracas and you see the lot of housing has actually been built by that money which was coming to China from China, uh, in lieu of the oil that they were getting from Venezuela. So the pattern of trade was very different.
Yeah, Ranjit, would you like to comment?
Yeah, regarding this media coverage, I would like to mention that the media currently in India, the source of their information is probably Google, and they reproduce or recycle the same information that is available to them in different places in Google, or the US newspapers like CNN or Fox News. These places they copy and paste the news. They're not in touch with uh, people in Venezuela. They have no connection. Why I'm saying this, that when this person Maria Corina Machado got a Nobel Prize, some of the very credible journalists in India, I can mention the name Ravish Kumar. Ravish Kumar runs a program, and in that he was mentioning about the work done by Maria Corina Machado, and he was also mentioning uh, Maduro as a dictator. So this kind of things are happening only because our media in India does not read things and there are many people who do not investigate the facts, and they just reproduce the things the way it is visible to them in other social media platforms or in other news channels that are probably they have their own hidden interests. So using not using appropriate word is because of that also, because if we see Nicolas Maduro, or as we heard that even Hugo Chavez, these people, revolutionary people, have been called dictators. So anyone who has a progressive political project, anyone who has taken the historic responsibility of taking this journey of mankind forward and fighting the forces that take us behind, these people will be called dictators by the people who are not mm, who are in the who have some hidden motives or agendas. So I think our Indian media is also influenced by that, because before the attack, media was not reporting about those warships that were there around the Caribbean Sea. They were. It was from past 2 3 months. Donald Trump and his government, Marco Rubio, they were issuing statements and they were trying to intimidate or create some kind of pressure on the government to give up. This was not being carried out. This was not being mm, uh, published by the media, Indian media. Only after attack, the Indian media has been very active, hyperactive, that you can see that all the newspapers like Hindustan Times or any newspaper, if you see, after the attack, there are they are reporting every second, every minute, even giving they are giving live news. Before that, there was no news at all by them.
Ranjit and Sonia, could you also suggest, for the benefit of our audience, what other sources of information that is unbiased? It need not be even pro Chavistas, but unbiased, reflecting on what is, or at least reporting from the ground in Venezuela.
So I would say that I, for example, have always tell in my classroom, irrespective of what's happened now in Venezuela, that if you have to understand Latin America, the internet sources are okay. I mean, but you have to really go beyond that. As far as Venezuela is concerned, I personally look at, of course, Venezuela analysis, and then there is this site called rebellion.org. So I'll just put it here.
Yeah.
So rebellion.org, rebellion.org. In fact, it gives you good coverage of what is happening in Latin America and elsewhere in the world on culture, on feminism, etc. And here you get, I mean, critical, as you are saying, not necessarily pro Chavista. They're articles, they're pretty critical of certain things that the Chavistas, the state may have done, So this is a good source. I, of course, read it in English, in Spanish, but I think it's available in English also. But these days, you can easily just do a Google Translate, just put the translator on and read. I have done that several times with things in French, etc. So, Rebellion, and of course, Venezuela Analysis is the other one, which is really good. This is one. And then Telesur, of course. So,
Yes.
Telesur is a very good. Then People's Dispatch.
Yeah.
So these are extremely important. This is the only way
Any
you can, yeah.
any newsletters
Newsletters, well, they are mostly
or
in
blogs?
Spanish. They're mostly in Spanish from
Okay.
Venezuela, but they do a lot of, I think the Venezuelans have understood that the information war has to be fought. And so they are very active on social media. Very, very active.
I have another question from Kulvinder.
Yeah.
How do you address the concerns that Maduro is not as popular as Chavez?
Mm.
Is it true that the kind of popular uprising that we saw in 2002 will not repeat because of this lack of popularity?
I mean, I'm sure Ranjit will have an answer to this, but I would say that there has been this thing that Chavez lacks the charisma of, sorry, Maduro lacks the charisma of Chavez. But as I mentioned, no doubt that Chavez was an absolutely charismatic personality, and Maduro, in fact, is a choice of Chavez. He kind of said that he was the vice president, of course, also at the time when Chavez died. But Maduro is, I don't know, I don't like to talk in terms of charisma, etc. But he's a wonderful speaker. I mean, I heard him in 2019 in Cuba when there were big leaders there, I mean, Miguel Diaz-Canel, Evo Morales, Daniel Ortega, and he comes out as a very, very good orator. We've heard him in Venezuela. He touches the people's, pulse. He's a fantastic communicator. He's a great communicator. He knows how to speak the people's language, and he has tremendous affection from the people. In fact, it is not true that the people aren't coming out. There are huge numbers of people on Caracas and other cities, mobilized, in the streets. What has happened this time is at that time Hugo Chavez was not flown out of the country. He was kidnapped, but he was there. And the people's there was a almost a civil war like situation, but at that time the popular upsurge was able to get him back because he was there in the country. In this case, he's not there in the country. He's been probably learning from the 2002 experience. The United States thought that it's better to take him out, because certainly otherwise the people would have gone wherever he was. So it is he commands a lot of affection from people. People were crying. I mean, if you look at the videos, if you talk to people, and as I was saying, even the nationalist democratic opposition, not the far right kind, has been openly condemning the US invasion.
There's another question for Ranjit from Ajay Kumar. He asks, is there any comparison of their electronic system, electoral system and ours in India?
Mm, yeah, we can compare. We can compare. Is the system the major comparison that we have is we are a representative democracy, and
No,
theirs is
he meant the electronic voting machine and the way they operate there. You seem to suggest that there is more transparency in the thing, that in the sense that you can see what you have voted for in Venezuela, unlike here, where only a very small percentage of printed ballots are available for inspection. Very, very small fraction. Is that so in Venezuela?
Yeah, in Venezuela, the systems of audit at every level is stronger than us. So the audits can be done uh, when citizens want. The audits can be done when a opposition or any other leader wants. So the levels of audits are many. I have a sheet that I can share in my presentation that I have shown you. So all the levels of audits are there.
Yeah.
So there is one question there, one comment rather there by that he's a wonderful speaker but not a good leader. I thought that in my presentation, that's precisely what I was trying to focus on, Nicolas Maduro as a leader, as an anti-imperialist statesman, He, as I said, and I'm repeating myself, he inherited a very, very difficult situation, because please remember that he comes as a president in 2013 for the first time as interim, then wins the election with a slender margin. And that is the time when the sanctions start. 2014, the oil prices dropped. 2015, Barack Obama's time, the sanctions start. So the economic strangulation of Venezuela starts from 2000. In fact, sorry, just to go back to the electoral system, I think it was Jimmy Carter who visited Venezuela and he said it is a fantastic
Yeah.
electoral system. Even in US, we don't have such a good system. Now, that very election system, which their own ex-president had kind of said that it is one of the best I have seen in the world. This is what Jimmy Carter said. And uh, the same election after 2015, they're discrediting each election. 2019, they say, no, 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 Nicolas Maduro has not won, Juan Guaido has won. 2024, this technical failure that happened, it might look like a story and it looked like a story to many. But after, that's why I pointed out what's happened in Honduras in November 2024, 2025. A similar technical failure because there a left candidate was leading there, Santiago Nasrallah. So this has become a pattern to steal elections. And in the case of Honduras, please do go and see any site that you would like to. Even Reuters, Guardian, etc., are reporting the controversial results and the fact that the US backed uh, candidate has won. So uh, I think the fact that you are saying that all the sources that I have given are left leaning, that they will be biased too. I have told you that in Venezuela analysis as well as in rebellion.org, they have articles sometimes fairly critical of a certain Chavista project. So, but if you are looking at an alternative source, there's nothing unbiased as far as Venezuela is concerned. You can only have a critical, healthy critical distance from the Chavista project. So, if you have to move away from the disinformation, read both, read this, read the other stuff, and learn Spanish, please, so that you can actually go to some of the sources. I can tell you that that has helped me a lot. The fact that I know Spanish and I can glean information. It takes me ages to check on one fact because you have to counter check. I'll give you a small example. I was doing a paper on a writer called Leonardo Padura from Cuba, whose novels are known to be very, very, very critical of the Cuban reality. Everywhere I heard that he's a dissident and he lives outside. But the fact is that he lives in Cuba. He's got the National Literature Prize. But if you say that Leonardo Padura is living inside Cuba and has got the National Literature Prize, you cannot say that the regime is authoritarian. You cannot say that they are tyrants. How will they allow somebody like Padura to live in Cuba and write such novels? So things are not the way they are made out to be. I mean, media wars now are being fought in through AI and through whatnot. We know about fake news pandemic. So let's not be innocent and imagine that news would be unbiased.
I think we've run out of time. Thank you so much, Sonia and Ranjit, for this highly illuminative discussion on happenings, grave happenings in Venezuela. And it also gives us a chance to strengthen solidarities, uh, build solidarities, extend solidarities to the people of Venezuela in this grim hour. I thank you very much, and on behalf of the Bangalore Collective, I thank all